At 4:20 a.m. UTC on March 30th, 2026, at least 11 airstrikes impacted the Abadan oil refinery in southwestern Iran. This wasn't a localized skirmish. At the same moment, sirens were sounding in Amman and Dimona, and interceptors were engaging ballistic missiles over the Dead Sea. Within minutes of the first reports, traders were pricing in a major escalation. Brent and WTI crude contracts spiked as risk premiums widened across the Persian Gulf, reflecting the reality that one of the region's largest refining complexes was now under direct fire. Hello and welcome back to the channel. To our new viewers, we're glad you're here. To understand why this specific facility triggers a global reaction, we have to look at where it sits on the map. Abadan is located on the Iran-Iraq border, built on an island along the Shatt al-Arab waterway. For a century, it has functioned as the engine of the Iranian economy, but its position makes it a uniquely accessible target. As the map shows, there is no physical buffer here. The refinery sits in a direct line of sight from the border and is only 53 kilometers from the open waters of the Persian Gulf, leaving it completely exposed to both land and naval operations. This exposure isn't a new discovery. The 2026 strikes are simply the latest use of a playbook that has existed for over 100 years. To paralyze the Iranian state, you strike Abadan. That playbook began when British interests built the refinery in 1909. By the late 1930s, it had grown into the largest oil refining facility on Earth, a sprawling industrial complex that dominated the riverbank. The British administrators lived in the luxury of the Garden City, with planned streets and greenery, while the local workers running the refinery were kept at the bottom of the socio-economic ladder, living in the shadow of the wealth they produced. In 1951, Premier Mohammad Mossadegh challenged that arrangement. He moved to nationalize the British-controlled assets, attempting to bring the refinery and its profits under Iranian control. Crowds filled the streets in support. For many Iranians, this was a moment to finally use their national resources to address widespread domestic poverty. The British response was to cut the city off. They withdrew their technicians, froze Iranian bank accounts, and deployed warships into the waterway. The goal was to physically prevent a single gallon of oil from leaving the island. The resulting economic collapse led directly to the 1953 coup. Orchestrated by the CIA and MI6, the operation overthrew Mossadegh and restored Mohammad Reza Pahlavi to power, returning the refinery to a Western-led consortium. The 1950s made it clear, because Abadan generates the majority of the government's revenue, whoever controls these pipes controls the leadership in Tehran. In 1980, Saddam Hussein followed that same logic. He calculated that to win a war against Iran, he didn't need to capture the capital. He just needed to destroy the source of its wealth at Abadan. Iraq launched an invasion with 60,000 troops and hundreds of tanks. They crossed the Karun River, encircling the city on 3 sides. For 11 months under siege, daily artillery bombardments targeted the refinery's towers. By the time the smoke cleared, the world's largest refinery had been reduced to twisted metal. Production stopped entirely as the pipes were shattered and buildings were leveled by the shelling. Deep within the ruins, local fighters and Iranian paramilitaries held the line. They fought house to house, surviving on vital supplies brought in by helicopters and small boats under the cover of night. In 1981, Iran finally drove the Iraqi forces back. Using a combination of heavy armor and large-scale infantry charges, they broke the encirclement and pushed the front line away from the city. The 1980 siege highlighted the reality of this landscape. Abadan is where Iran's national wealth and its most vulnerable physical border occupy the exact same square mile. By the 2020s, the refinery had been fully rebuilt. Leading up to the 2026 strikes, it was once again a dense operational complex of hundreds of smokestacks and a massive logistics hub. Because this facility is so vital to the region's energy output, striking it triggers immediate retaliations, putting pressure on commercial tankers in the Strait of Hormuz and forcing neighboring countries to put their defenses on high alert. For the global economy, the impact is structural. Damage to Abadan reduces the available supply of refined products, which forces energy companies to widen their risk premiums to account for the instability. This chart tracks the immediate reaction to the 2026 strikes. You can see the sudden upward climb in Brent and WTI prices as the news was confirmed. The price jumped not from a general fear of war, but because Abadan's physical infrastructure was burning. Ultimately, history shows that what happens in Abadan doesn't stay in Abadan. Because of where this city sits, its destruction dictates the price of energy worldwide. If you found this breakdown helpful, please subscribe to the channel, share this video, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive.